The scanner said nothing down here was alive. No heat, no movement. A dead rock circling a dead star. Then we turned off the lights, and the dark lit up. Hundreds of them, warm shapes, moving, some small, some not. All of them awake, all of them hunting. The planet wasn't dead, we just hadn't been looking the right way. This is what we found on VENATRIX Prime, and we're still trying to understand it. Exploration log, VENATRIX Prime. Vessel Aurelia 2. Status hostile. We almost didn't come here at all. VENATRIX wasn't on any list worth landing for. A rogue cold world around a dying star, flagged dead by every long-range scan. No surface heat, no signal, nothing to see. But nothing to see turned out to be the most literal thing anyone ever wrote in a report. Because you can't see this world from orbit. Not because it's hidden. Because it gives off no light of its own, and there's no sun to light it for you. We came because of one strange reading. Faint pulses of heat on the night side, in patterns too regular to be volcanic. Reyes called it. We'd take a look. We figured an hour, maybe two, and then back up to the stars. We were down there a lot longer than that. This world has no sun. Not really. Just a brown dwarf, barely glowing, more ember than star. So down on the surface, there's no light. None. Reyes brought the lander down by instrument alone, into a black so total it felt like a wall. The cabin lights were the only light for 100 million miles, and the moment they touched the ground outside, they just stopped. Swallowed. Like the dark was drinking them. We stepped out into nothing. I want to be honest about how that felt. Your eyes are open, they're working, and there's nothing for them to do. No horizon, no ground, no up, no down. Just the sound of your own breathing inside the helmet and the cold pressing in from every side. Vance kept one hand on the lander the whole time. So did I. Let go, and you could walk in a straight line and never find your way back. And then Okafor switched her camera to thermal. That's when we saw it. Light doesn't matter here. Heat does. A warm thing in the dark glows like a torch. A cold thing is invisible. For 2 billion years, everything alive on this planet evolved to see the same way. Not with eyes, with heat. We know how that works. We have it on Earth. A pit viper can find a mouse in total darkness. It sees the warmth through an organ between its eye and its nostril, sensitive to a change of 1/1000th of a degree. The strange part? The protein it uses to feel that heat is the same one your tongue uses to taste a chili pepper. Somewhere back in time, a sensor for spice became a sensor for warmth. Give that trick 2 billion years and a world with no sun, and you don't get a snake. You get them. We didn't have to wait long to see how they hunt. Out on the plain, something huge was glowing. A grazing animal, big as a truck, its body burning bright with heat in Okafor's screen. It never saw them coming. Of course it didn't. They run cold when they want to. 6 of them. They came in from 6 directions, and for a moment their skin lit up. Warm streaks running down their flanks, flashing in sync, like a fleet signaling. Then the streaks went dark, and so did the animal. It happened in maybe 4 seconds. One moment a bright, living thing, filling the whole screen with heat. The next, a cooling smear on the ground, and 6 cold shapes moving away from it the way smoke moves, like they'd never been warm at all. We didn't speak for a while after that. You don't, when you've just watched something die in a language you only half understand. Vance said something I haven't forgotten. They went quiet the same way we'd go quiet, on purpose. These weren't just predators, they talked. Not with sound, not with light, with heat. A flush of warmth across the skin, and the others understood. A whole language written in temperature, and we could only read it through a screen. Okafor was the one who said the word first. A civilization. Down here, in the dark, hunting in packs that spoke without a sound. And the part that unsettled me most was how little it takes. You don't need to be brilliant to hunt like this. A study back home found it years ago. Pack hunting, the kind we think takes intelligence, can come from a handful of simple rules and a lot of practice. So these things didn't outthink their world, they outweighted it. 100 million years of patience sharpened into something that looks like a culture and moves like a reflex. That should have made me feel better. It didn't, because Okafor had gone quiet, looking at her own hand on the thermal screen. It was glowing. We all were. 4 bright shapes in our heated suits, burning against the cold like 4 small fires someone had carried out onto the plane. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. We just watched what happens here to the brightest thing in the dark. And we were the brightest thing for miles. We followed the heat. Far out on the plain, something was glowing that wasn't an animal. Too steady, too still, too warm for too long. A structure. It rose out of the dark like a coal that never burned out. Walls that held heat the way our buildings hold light. No windows. Why would they have windows? Light means nothing here. But there were channels cut into the stone, fine as veins, moving warmth through the whole thing so its people could see it. A building you don't look at, a building you feel. Okafor couldn't stop talking about it. To them, she said, this place isn't dark, it's blazing, a lighthouse. The one bright, safe point in a world of blind cold. They didn't build it to keep the weather out. They built it so they could see each other. For these creatures, warmth isn't comfort, it's sight, it's company. A cold room isn't an empty room, it's a room nobody can see anyone else in. The loneliest thing on this world isn't being alone, it's going cold. Sato reached the entrance first, he always does. Inside, the walls were warm to the touch and patterned. Old heat marks worn into the stone by generations standing in the same places. Little hollows, polished smooth, where bodies had pressed against the warm stone for so many years they'd left their shape behind. You could see where the small ones stood, down low, near the floor. A whole history written in worn warmth. This wasn't a fortress, it was a temple, and it was full. We came in low and quiet, and they didn't notice us at first. Dozens of them, gathered in the warm dark, skin flickering with those slow streaks of heat. The priest caste, the big ones, leading whatever this was. They were facing something. All of them, turned the same way a congregation faces an altar. We followed where they were looking, and there was nothing there. A patch of the floor, black in the thermal camera, stone cold. A spot of pure nothing in a building built entirely out of warmth. They were worshiping the cold. That stopped me. Everything on this world is built around heat. Warm is alive. Warm is visible, warm is safe. And cold, cold is where you go blind. Cold is death. So why would a species that hunts the whole planet build a temple around a patch of cold and bow to it? Okafor pulled the old survey data while we stood there, and the pattern came up fast, and it wasn't good. These cold spots, they appear. Out of nowhere, a piece of the world just goes cold. And every time one shows up, a pack goes missing. No bodies, no struggle, just gone, and a new cold place where they used to be. They don't understand it either. They never have. So they did the only thing that's ever worked. They stopped going near the cold, and they started to pray. And I understood them, standing there. That's the part I didn't expect. We do the same thing. We always have. When something keeps taking us, and we can't see it, and we can't fight it, we build something around the place it happened, and we bow our heads, and we tell ourselves that if we're careful enough, it won't come for us next. These are the deadliest hunters on their world, and they live their whole lives inside the same fear we do. The fear of the thing in the dark you were never built to see. We should have left then. Nobody gave the order. Nobody had to. We just didn't. Because Sato had found something on the far side of the temple. One of them, alone, away from the others. Smaller, hanging back at the edge of the cold spot, right where none of the others would go. We put the thermal camera on it, and it barely showed up. It was one of their own, but it ran cold. Born wrong by their standards. Born without the heat. Invisible to its own kind. A ghost at the edge of the congregation, the only one of them that could stand near the cold place without being afraid of it, because it was already half cold itself. I keep thinking about that one. The whole world sees by warmth, and here was a creature its own family could never quite see. Born into a place where to be cold is to be invisible, and to be invisible is to be alone. And yet, it was the only one of them standing near the cold spot without bowing, not praying, just watching it. Closer than any of the others would ever dare to go. Okafor had a theory, and it chilled me more than the cold did. What if this one isn't cursed? She said. What if this one is the only member of its whole species that the predator can't see either? The one thing on this planet that could walk right up to the dark and look it in the face, because the dark has nothing to lock onto. A creature its family treats like a ghost, standing closest to the only thing that could save them, and they'll never know it. We didn't get to ask it anything, because that was when Okafor went very quiet and turned the camera back toward the crowd. And I need you to understand what we were looking at. A temple full of hunters, the deadliest things on this planet. Every one of them facing the cold spot, watching for danger the way they always do, by looking for heat. And moving through them, slow, unhurried, right through the middle of the crowd, was a shape. Not a warm shape, a hole. A piece of the room with the heat pulled out of it, walking, cold flowing off it like smoke. The hunters didn't move. They couldn't see it. Of course they couldn't. It gave off nothing. It passed close enough to one of the priests to touch it. The priest didn't flinch, kept facing the cold spot, watching for a danger that was already standing at its shoulder. We watched a predator walk through a room full of the deadliest things on the planet, and not one of them knew it was there. In a world that sees with heat, the one thing you can never see is the thing that has none. That's what takes the packs. That's what makes the cold spots. Not a place they worship, a footprint. The thing they pray to isn't a god. It's the predator that hunts them, the one they were never built to see. And the only reason we could see it at all was the camera in Okafor's hands. We've got it on record, that moment. A whole civilization of hunters, blind to the one thing hunting them, and 4 people from another star, watching it walk among them, unable to shout a warning in a language made of heat. And then it stopped. The cold shape stopped moving, and it turned. Not toward the hunters, toward us. Standing in that warm temple in our heated suits, breathing, glowing, burning bright, we'd forgotten the one rule of this whole world. On a world where warm means visible, we weren't explorers. We were the brightest thing this planet had ever seen. A bonfire, walking into a hunting ground. Reyes didn't shout, he just said it, low. Kill the heat. All of it. Now. We cut the suit heaters, cut the lights, they were never the point. Stood in the dark, in the cold, going dim, trying to become nothing while a thing made of nothing decided what we were. It's a strange thing to fight for your life by doing less. No running, no weapons, nothing to aim at. Just standing still and turning yourself off, degree by degree, and hoping you go dark before it gets curious enough to reach out. I could hear everyone's breathing slow down on the channel. We were trying to be smaller than our own heartbeats. Vance was counting under his breath how long we could last with the heaters off, out here, before the planet's own cold took us instead. 2 minutes, maybe 3. After that, the cold stops being our camouflage and starts being the thing that kills us. That's the trap of this whole world in one breath. To hide from the dark, you have to become the dark. And the dark is what's been killing them all along. We backed out of that temple one cold step at a time, watching a hole in the world watch us back. Every step I expected to feel something, I don't know what. A cold that wasn't the planet's. A pressure, a breath with no warmth in it. It never came, but I felt watched the entire way. It didn't follow. I don't know why. Maybe we went dim enough. Maybe it had already eaten. Maybe it was just curious, the way we were curious about the brightest thing it had ever seen. We made it back to the lander with the heaters off and our hands going numb. Reyes took us up fast, through that black wall of an atmosphere, out to where there's light again and a star you can actually see. We thought that was the end of it. Okafor was still watching the thermal feed as we climbed. One last look down at the temple, the packs, the cold place they pray to. And she said, quiet, "It's moving." The cold spot, the one in the temple, the footprint we'd been standing next to. It wasn't sitting still anymore. It was spreading, a thin line of cold crossing the dark plain, following the exact path we'd walked back to the lander. It didn't cool down after we left. It went looking. A predator that hunts by patience just learned something new. That sometimes the brightest prey doesn't come from across the plain. Sometimes it comes down out of the sky. We don't know if it can follow us up here. We don't think so. We tell ourselves it can't. But somewhere down there, in a world that can't see the sun, there's a thing that has only ever looked along the ground. And now it knows there's a reason to look up. We left VENATRIX Prime behind, but it did not leave us. Somewhere ahead, another world is waiting, and the Aurelia is already moving toward it. If you want to travel with us aboard the Aurelia, subscribe. A new world every week.